Lamaku, can we get a sound check from you? If you unmute your mic.
Thank you. Aloha. With whom am I speaking?
Hi, this is Alexis. Thank you. Your microphone is working.
Thank you. You know, I'm desired just by phone. I think I pushed the button that showed me participating on your screen. I'd like to access just by phone like I did the last time, at the time for testimony, yeah?
Yes. So you're on by phone.
Can you direct me, because I think I'm on your screen for...
Oh, so it might be both boxes.
Oh,
Can you advise?
Okay, and your phone number is on here as well, so you are on by phone and on the screen?
So I would like to just go by phone,
Okay.
and I followed the directions that you sent me by email.
Your video is off. I'm gonna remove this one and your phone should still remain. So let's try that. Are you still there by phone? If you are, you're on mute.
Alexis, can you request that she unmute and see if that works?
I think that might be one of our other testifiers.
Ah, got it.
Can the 808-937-7779, can you please identify yourself? You'll have to unmute.
This is George Yasuda.
Thank you, George. Your microphone is working.
Okay, should I testify now?
Not yet. We're just testing your microphone. You can go back on mute.
Got it.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, Chair Young, I think we have quorum at the moment. If Rosalind and Marissa join, that would be terrific. And I think we should note that we have council members Holeka Inaba and Rebecca Villegas on as well. Good evening to you both.
Okay, did you say Marissa and Rosalind are on?
No, they are not.
Okay.
We were expecting Marissa and we did not hear back from Rosalind.
Okay.
So hopefully Marissa will join shortly.
Okay, it's just that my screen shows so many people, and if I'm missing somebody, then it's because it's not showing up on my screen. Okay.
Okay.
All right. All right. Well, let's get started. Let me just kind of read in the rules and things. Because of the novel coronavirus, COVID-19 emergency and state federal guidance on large meetings or gatherings, and pursuant to the mayor's proclamations regarding COVID-19 community development Plan Action Committee meetings will be held online until further notice. Members of the public may watch the Community Development Action Plan Action Committee meetings live online. Minutes of the Community Development Plan Action Committee meeting will be transcribed and posted on the Planning Department's website. Just a reminder about Aloha etiquette. We speak one at a time. Please mute your device unless you're speaking, and that helps us with the background noise as well. Please raise your hand, either virtually or physically, and wait for recognition by the chair before speaking. As I mentioned earlier, sometimes I can't see everybody, so raise the hand if it doesn't appear like you're getting my attention. Feel free to use other methods, or somebody call me out on it, okay? And then remember to speak slowly and clearly into your microphone. I think these Zooms are a challenge for us all, depending on the quality of the computer you have. So let's call it to order. I'll do the roll call. So I see David Huerta. I see Kari Kamura.
Here.
I see Shane Pollicott Nelson.
Yep, present.
Yep. And Franz Weber.
Yes, here.
Rob, is there Marissa or Rosalind present?
No, I do not see them.
Okay. All right. So we expect them, but excused are Shirley David and Janice Palmer Glennie. So before I ask for any additions to the agenda, I just wanted to share Olelo no Eau, which is sort of been my habit. And this time it was, I kind of looked at something that I thought might be meaningful, and as I usually do. And I came up with Kona Mauna Uli Uli, Kona Mauna Ulupo, which refers really to the Green Mountains of Kona and the dense forests of Kona. And since we're talking about open space today, I thought that would be applicable because those are, those very important to us. So, any additions to the agenda? If not, do we need to move to accept the agenda at all? Keiko, as is, we can just go ahead and go on. Okay. So why don't we move on to the announcements, Keiko?
Sure. So a couple things. One, it's nice to see all of you again. Happy to have Rebecca and Holeka join us also. We are trying to set the dates for the rest of 2021 for the Action Committee meetings. And we're trying to get back into this rhythm of scheduling on, the second Tuesday of a month so that folks can get it on their calendars. And so tentatively, we've set the date for Kona. August will be the all AC meeting, so it will be all island AC together. And we're already starting to develop some ideas around what might be of interest to folks, but we're gonna definitely reach back out to you guys after this, so early July, to see what you folks think. So August 12th, and then the next Kona AC meeting would be September 9th, and then November 10th. And so we already know that there's gonna be some folks who are traveling and might not be able to make it. So the sooner we know your availability, we can either shift as needed, or if we know we're gonna have quorum, then we move forward as is. So we'll send you guys a calendar after this too, so that you have that instead of just me verbally telling you. And then second, we were asked to provide an update on the general plan. And so I just have a statement that I'm gonna read, and it's just kind of where we're at right now. So the administration is currently reviewing the different components of the general plan, including the 2019 draft that included public input and different alternative strategies and opportunities to address the provided public input. And so once administration has completed their review, then they'll work with staff to update the timeline, because we know our timeline on the website is outdated. So we'll work to update the timeline for the next phases, which include more public review, before it goes for revision, planning commission hearings, and then submittal to county council. So that's kind of where we are with the general plan. And as soon as we know more and we have an updated timeline, we'll be sure to share that with you folks right away. And then the last announcements for us anyway is staffing updates. And so I know you guys have probably noticed there's some new faces, there's some missing faces. And so the long range division is kind of shifting Kuleana a little bit as we try to better align ourselves with the different work that's in front of us. And so Kamuela is, you folks know his interest and his love. And so he's focused on natural and cultural resources, and Rob focused on infrastructure and design. And then Alexis and I on community planning. And so as you know, and you've experienced time and time again, right? All of these focus areas are deeply intertwined. And so we are continuing to work as a team and approach our work as a team so that we can look at things holistically, but trying to really have these focus areas that help us to better serve our communities. So we're all still available. Kamu is actually in the cubicle right next to me, so I can scream at him anytime that I want to. And so definitely continuing to work as a team, but you'll see Alexis and I more frequently as we go into September and November. And hopefully we'll add new people to our team. So maybe September we'll be able to announce someone new. So anyway, I think that's all of our updates.
Chair Young, this is Rob. Maybe before we proceed, just to inform you that Councilmember Miley David has joined us.
Thank you. Yeah, and my apologies to everyone on the line. Generally, I ask staff to introduce themselves, which I kind of like overlooked. So can I call you out on that, Keiko, first?
Sure.
And Alex.
Of course. So I think that most of you probably recognize my face. I've been around in the long range division for maybe 5 years now. I'm not quite sure how that time has passed so quickly, but I'm sure you guys feel the same way because you've been sitting on this committee for longer than that. So I'm just excited, extremely passionate about working with community. I feel the ups and downs that you guys feel on the community side and on the county side. So there's a lot of, anyway, I'm very, very committed. And so I'm excited that I get to now expand and work around the island because I think it helps to provide this big picture. And although we have specific interests in our different communities, overall, our goals for protecting and keeping Moku'a Keawe the way that we envision it are very similar. And so the more we can all kind of band together, I think the better off we'll be.
Thank you. Rob?
Yes, Rob Lesser here with the Long Range Planning Department. I know I've seen many of you in these meetings. Unfortunately, we have not had the opportunity since I joined in November 2019 to meet in person. So unfortunately, never got to get to that point. So our interaction has been minimal because we have not had many meetings, but I'm glad to see it resurrected and here to support as this transition happens, as Keiko announced. I've been moving on to infrastructure and design, which is still within long range, which will then connect, of course, to many issues that I think will be important to all of the ACs. So may not be in this forum officially, but I'm sure we'll be engaged in the future as many of those infrastructure topics come to play. So thank you.
Hi, Alexis.
Hi, everyone. Alexis Ching. Nice to meet you virtually. I'm here to help support and empower you as community members in the Action Committee. Like Keiko said, I'll be working with her on the community engagement part, and we will be in touch. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. You all have my email and phone number, and I'm happy to communicate anytime.
Just as a logistical point, Alexis and Rob are continuing to work in the Kona office, and then Kamu and I are with the rest of the team in Hilo.
Okay, thank you. I'll get onto the public comment on the agenda items. It's our policy to have our folks who want to testify ahead of the business items, on the business items. So we received written testimony originally from, I think, six written testimonies, but there will be only 3 people actually testifying orally in person. But the written testimonies will be, you're going to be able to find it online through a link. So 2 of the written testimonies submitted were not accompanied by oral testimony, and but they will be available to the AC members and the public online. So the action committees should have received 6 written testimonies. The following communications are numbers are available on the CDP website and will be attached to the meeting minutes. Communication 2021-5, 2021-6, 2021-7, 2021-8, 2021-9, and 2021-10. So we will be having 3 people testifying orally tonight. So our first testifier is George Yasuda. He also provided written testimony, communication 2021-07. And he's representing himself and testifying on agenda item 1, George. And just a reminder that we, with respect to time, we want the comments to be limited to 3 minutes so we can get through our full agenda. So so please try and respect the time limits if where possible. Thank you. George?
Aloha, my name is George Yasuda, president of Tiaralani Coffee, and I'm also a lifeguard instructor and an agent for an international humanitarian group. Thank you, first of all, for those involved in this long-range planning and having my written testimony and flooding photos on for the records. My testimony today is to ask that we mitigate the flooding problems and add more watershed areas and natural habitat reserves. The photos of the flooding on my written testimony, as recent as this past weekend, show a travesty to what we are doing to our ocean and land. As a comparison, as an example, illustration, if I had a neighbor dumping mud and toxins into my swimming pool, I would be infuriated. With the ocean, it is drastically worse. Billions of coral polyps and much more marine life die. And, you know, they're voiceless, and it's sad to see. When you look at the photos, I just added one more and sent it to Alexis Ching. And if that could be, if you guys can look at my written testimony and that the supplemental photo I just sent, that would be great, because it is really a travesty of what we're doing to the ocean and the land. So if we could get proactive in mitigating the flooding in our, get into our planning phase, that would be great. Just a side note, I've been out taking thousands of people out stand-up paddling, and the dolphin population, in just 6 years, the superpod was about 2,200. Now the superpods in winter are probably only about 85. That's how much decreased it is because of what we're doing to the ocean. So anyway, that's it. And thank you for this opportunity. I really appreciate it. And aloha.
Thank you, George. All right. Can we allow time for any questions from the committee members?
Yeah, we'll leave that to your discretion, Chair.
Okay. So any questions for George at this point? Okay.
Not right now, Chair, but I did want to ask him if he was able to report this to the harbors, like DLNR as well, if he reported this to DLNR.
The dolphin thing or the flooding?
No, the flooding. The actually both, George, if you did, yeah.
Yes, the the dolphin first, yes, to NOAA too.
Yeah.
And then as far as the flooding, yes, Brian Stanley and Stafford Omija of the county engineering, they were involved. Very, very good responses. And one day, if you guys could join me to see, we completed a 4-week project. It was putting in anti-erosion and anti-flooding controls.
Mm-hmm.
And we just got completed on Friday. And then Saturday, the flood waters came. Our erosion controls stopped all the water in that corridor. Whereas the neighboring corridors, that's where all the mud came from and went down to the ocean. So if guys could come look at some of these projects, it will be real good for you guys to see, because it's actual, real time tested projects, and it passed the test and it's passed flooding. So yeah, if you guys could do that, one day when you guys can.
Chair, if I could ask, or is that it, Alexis, that you just posted the information that George, the projects that George is working on?
If you click on that, then it will take you to the communications for George. I can also drop that specific communication in the chat.
Yeah, 1 second. I just want to make sure that it has the information on the project. Sorry.
Yeah, guys, I didn't include the photos for the projects. It shows muddy waters filled up in the basins. We made 5 basins. And then it also, I have videos of neighboring places that they were overwhelmed. So the places we did, it just shows how these basins work really well. And in the 42 years of doing this, I have had 0 flooding on the projects that I do. So even Brian of the engineering department said that is a super good record, and it's just respect for the ocean and the land. Yeah. So one day, if you guys could join me, I want to show you these things, because the ocean is really decreasing in quality. And that is the attraction for our tourists and also for our people here, yeah?
Thanks, George. Chair, I just want to put this on record that we had conversations, the CDP had conversations regarding the flooding when the FEMA guys came out, and we did recommend some of the inaccuracies in some of their studies. And I think this draws exactly what we're talking about. And so I'd like to see somehow if we can figure out to continue this conversation. I don't know how to proceed with that, except that we tried from like several years ago, I remember, to clarify the studies that FEMA conducted in which the county had created policies, and this is the outcome right here.
Wow. Thank you for doing that. That is awesome that you guys did that, because yeah, the FEMA records are not accurate, and so this flooding continues. If just a little bit more effort be put into this, it would prevent this muddy waters. And yeah, so yeah, thanks for doing that.
Well, committee members are certainly welcome and encouraged to make suggestions on agenda items for discussion. So this could possibly, be a suggestion. I think it's just something we're going to have to work out on, and maybe, I don't know how broad or specific we want to be on it, but we should probably, if we do get it on the agenda, be, not overly broad.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I appreciate that.
Sure.
George, this is Keiko. If you're comfortable with us sharing your contact information with Action Committee members, then that way, if specific folks are interested in reaching out to you and kind of maybe talking a little bit more deeply about the topic to see how it could be brought to the agenda, we'd be happy to do that.
You know, there is, once you guys see the kind of information I'll show you through aerial maps and all, it is, you're going to see how costly the damage can be. It's waiting to happen. And, you know, because we're getting more populated and Kailua town is at risk, high risk. And, you know, a lot of the condos and the YWAM base, 2 schools, Hololoa School, Kahakai School. And I'll show you guys on the aerial what I mean. And, you know, that'll be great. Yeah, share my contact. That'll be awesome.
Okay, great. Any other questions for George? Thank you very much, George. It's very helpful.
Thank you.
Okay, so our second testifier, Simi McMichael, provided 3 communications, written testimony, 2021-05-06-08, and she'll be testifying on agenda item 2. Simi?
Yep. Chair Young, we do not see Simi in the meeting today. So we have provided her with the link previously, but apparently she has not arrived. So I think we should move on to the next testifier.
Okay. And again, all her testimonies is going to be available online, on link. So the third testifier is Lamaku Miki Halaroy, representing herself in Ahuena Heiau, testifying on agenda item 2. Lamaku?
Aloha.
Aloha.
Hiki ke helemua. Hiki ke holomua. Hello, can you hear me?
Sorry, I'm on mute. I can hear you. Yes.
Hello.
Hello, Lamaku. This is Charlie. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Now I can hear you. There was silence there for a while. Aloha.
Yes. Aloha.
I am Lamaku Mikahala Roy. I am Kahu of Ahuena Heiau. In Kahuna La'au Lapa'au Morna Simeona said the 70s were a time of great spiritual growth. Among numerous efforts carried out in the communities, Hokulea traveled to Tahiti. Ho'oponopono was implemented at the Geneva Convention and taught to the world, and Ahuena Heiau was restored in the Hawaiian Islands. In 2005, I succeeded my father as Kahu of Ahuena Heiau by loving communication with the ancestors of Uiwi, who uphold the highest light of Akua at Kamakohonu. Beginning for me in these past years, I'm instructed by them of the name our people have known over centuries for the station I inherit. I am Lamaku by Akua. I have begun to hear from the ancestors who uphold the highest light of Akua at Kamakohonu. Ahuena Heiau is the first restored temple in the Hawaiian Islands, in the Pacific, and on Earth. The Pope in the institution of the Roman Catholic Church is always recognized in his station and would, in any legal proceedings involving himself, be recognized by his full name and title. So I, as Kahu, spiritual guardian of Ahuena Heiau, the first restored temple, sacred temple in the institution of the first faith of Oiwi upon earth, do require the fullest recognition. I begin the education and edification of all people on earth of the vital news breaking in Hawaii by the fountains of Fissure 8. In the years of the early 2000 decade, my nonprofit, Kulanahuli Honua, launched a protective a protective service to the community. It was a 501c3 effort launched by many to propose to be in opposition fully to the Ali'i Parkway. The reasons then are still the same. protection of sacred and important lands. The news that has come since that time makes this even more important and more vitally true. I have been in the process of notifying the legislature and all the highest bodies on earth related to, first of all, America and the state of Hawaii of this news. As King Liholiho Kamehameha did, I hear from our ancestors of the light. This is tremendous news. We are the only people of the earth that can say this. This is tremendously important, and for that reason, did I testify in 2019 to your action committee on the Ali'i Parkway, and further provide information to your long-range planning department for this information that's budding. The ancestors of Uivi are set to inform and teach about the sacred lands of Hawaii in this miracle of occurrence. I will let you know that according to a letter that I have put forward to the legislature and to all county council members, Kaloko Honokohau served as the northern boundary of lands of great sacredness to Uivi and to all mankind. Kaloko on the north and Honaunau on the south enclosed the intensely sacred lands dedicated to Akua. Within these lands were and are Ahu'enaheau. At Pu'u is the sacredness focused and identified as the heart of Kaluokalani, translated as the second heaven. While Pu'u is identified as the heart of Kaluokalani, truly the mountain to shoreline trails of the North Kona coastline hold the true history of the heart of Kaluokalani. Kaluokalani is all of the Hawaiian Islands, extending northward through the northwestern Hawaiian Islands. Kaluokalani became the Kingdom of Hawaii, unified by Kamehameha the Great. These land points have always been honored, especially for bordering the lands held as sacred repository for all Uivi from time immemorial. You see, what is so important is the ancestors are identifying the birthplace of the world, and they identify it as the second heaven, which is us. What announces it? Fissure 8. This is why I traveled to Puna to testify that the sacred name given to Fissure 8 by Akua is O Maka'olahou Kaluokalani, and it means the source of the rebirth of the second heaven. This is sublime oral history that needs to be taught to our Oiwi, the first people of the Pacific, and then to all mankind who wish to know. But it's important to all mankind, can you see? Because these are lands identified by the ancestors of Oiwi, and important for the birth of the planet. Fissure 8 heralds the rebirth of this planet, and Akua lovingly promises to heal the planet and all life upon the planet. Akua instructed me to begin a business named Keaulama in honor of the era of light, when the state of Hawaii forced the closure for the moment of Kulanahuli Honua by not upholding the Freedoms of Religions Act and not upholding a memorandum of agreement signed by my father and the state to uphold the dignity and the meaning of the capital of the Kingdom of Hawaii. This is the vital information I share because the Ali'i Parkway, as scheduled and as drawn, wants to flow through these vital lands. It will not happen because this information is going right to the highest offices in the lands that say they have say in Hawaii. Truly, Akua has say in Hawaii and on earth, because if we go by the good book in Psalms, it is said, the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. This is where Akua credits the people who have stood for Mauna Wakea, because this is the message. No development will be done there by Akua, and he will tell us why. I believe you've all received a copy of this letter, copy to the legislature. But here I am emphasizing that regarding Ali'i Parkway, it may not proceed even more than before. Further, all planning is altered, can you see, by this news.
Lamako, this is Charlie. I'm sorry for interrupting you, but we've gone past the 3 minutes, and it's on the, your subject matter is going to be on the agenda in item 2.
Oh, I thought I thought this was my period to speak.
Right.
So I did.
No, I appreciate that. And again, we're trying to keep things to 3 minutes so we can get through the entire agenda. So the business part of the agenda, after the testimonies, we're going to take on the business part of the agenda. And I just wanted to say that I think the concerns that you're expressing now may be covered in some of the council committee discussion in agenda item 2.
This, I believe, will cover it for my input. And unless anyone has any questions, I will leave your meeting at this time. This is what I care to say. And let me just confirm, Rob, that this is recorded and saved. Is that true?
Yes, that is correct, Lamaku. This will be recorded and available on the YouTube channel of the department.
Excellent. Because this is the word that truly, I've gone to every county office on the islands in Hawaii. All of the county council people on all islands are notified. But this is nothing new. When the sacred drum Pahuali Ikoa Oka'avaloa was named, and the news for the first preservation of Keolo Nahihi happened, I was moved by spirit to be in touch with Kauai all the way down. So this is nothing new. This is something that is part and parcel with taking care of Ahu'ena Heiau. So if you have any questions of me, now is a good time to ask me. Otherwise, please make sure and refer the letter that refer to the letter if you have any need to. I've highlighted it today in this testimony. I hope you'll see by this testimony for Ali'i Parkway, there's even more in evidence on why this may not happen. And I also want to say, anyone of Hawaiian ancestry who votes in favor of such a movement, now that they know this, you want to be very careful, because we have ancestors who serve Most High. You want to check with your ancestry to make sure your actions are pono a pololei. You want to really make sure about that, because you want to make sure that you find ancestors who answer you and not shun you when you call. I hope I'm clear. And for those of you who are not of the koko, he mea o kaha'awina keia. This is a lesson in our culture, in our spirituality. So I'll take this as there are no questions, and I mahalo, and I say aloha.
Any questions at this time? Okay. Thank you, and mahalo, Lamaku.
Mahalo, aloha.
Aloha. Aloha. Okay, so the next is on the business is the approval of the March 22nd, 2021 meeting. I believe everybody's received an electronic copy. Are there any questions, amendments, comments on any of the minutes?
Sure, I'll move to accept, but I'm going to recuse to vote. I wasn't at the meeting.
Do we require his vote, Rob, for quorum?
Yes, I would believe so, because we are just at quorum with the amount of members
I think we're gonna have
online.
to postpone it because I was not at that meeting to vote on that
Okay.
minutes. Yeah,
Right.
so
We
I
can
think we're
push it
gonna
to
have
the
to
next.
yeah.
Absolutely. If you feel uncomfortable, then I think we can.
Yeah, I wasn't at that meeting, so I don't want to.
Okay, can we move to defer?
Yeah, I move to defer the minutes to the next meeting.
Second.
Okay, Kari
Second.
seconds. Okay. Did you want to, we need to roll call that? All in favor of deferring? Keiko?
I don't think we need to, yeah.
Okay. Okay, all in favor, aye. Okay.
Just if I can note real quick, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I know that Miley David was on the call, so I just wanted to acknowledge that because there were 3 council members, Miley jumped off, but
Yeah.
she's still watching via YouTube. So anyway, just wanted to make note of that. Mahalo.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so let's get to the business. The first is action area for 2021 and 2022 CDP implementation. Planning staff will lead a mapping exercise to connect CDP community-based actions to community groups with which action committee members are active and believe may contribute to their implementation. The action committee may consider establishing investigatory subcommittees relative to specific initiatives that advance CDP implementation. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Keiko and Rob.
Cool. So this is something that would be really fun to do if we were in person, and we're gonna attempt to do this virtually. And so we'll see how it goes. So we really started this effort to try and better understand the implementation work that our action committee members are doing in order for us to be able to provide either better, more specific support, or if we need to get out of the way, we can hukian out of the way. Or if we need to help make connections with different agencies or other community groups who are maybe doing the same work. So trying to, if we're able to successfully do this mapping, we want to make sure that it's useful for you guys as well as for us. And so we're looking for some of that feedback too on how it might best serve you. But it would help us identify different synergies between different implementers. But even more importantly, I think it would help us identify pukas that need to be filled in. And so we know that it hasn't been an easy task to tie your individual initiatives to the CDP, or, yeah, and this is across the board for our action committees. And part of this is because our roles are not clearly defined in all of the CDPs. And so what we're hoping is that going through this exercise will help us, will help spark conversation and help us kind of dig in a little bit deeper so that we're a little bit more clear. And so we actually did this process with Uncle Charlie and Marissa. And I think, so I'll turn it over to you, Uncle Charlie, just for your thoughts on whether you thought it was helpful, and then we'll turn it over to Rob, who can facilitate the activity.
Yeah, sure. Well, just to be open and honest, I mean, the first time I looked at this, this is for council committee members. The first time I looked at it, I thought, oh, no more work for me. But if you look at how we network, each one of us, after I really had an opportunity to kind of look at this document, there's a pretty good diverse group of organizations and people and interests in this, and networking those together. I think there's a lot of common areas that would be really beneficial, not just for the action committee, but also for the networks that we're involved in. For instance, I'm with, say, the West Hawaii Fishery Council or the Kaikuleana Network. And what George just brought up has been with the oceans, has been a topic on the West Hawaii Fishery Council and Kaikuleana Network like forever. But they don't have insight into how the county operates or may have influence on some of those outcomes that are happening out in the ocean. So I think there's a strong link there. I think there's an opportunity for us all to further develop those links that we have and further help and develop our networks by soliciting perhaps information or comments from those networks specific to what we might be doing on the AC. One of the comments that came back, to be again open and transparent, is I work with NGOs, I work with nonprofits, as some of you do in the networks, and there's a concern that this may be seen to be political, seen to be lobbying, because we're working within, say, a county organization, and some people are just not, that's not where they want to dwell, I think, with their organizations. But that's not it at all. It's really just trying to share that interest in how we can maybe help each other. So I would encourage folks to take a look at, from that perspective, and I think there's a matrix that Rob and Keiko and our staff have worked up that you might find sort of places where you think you could fit or your organizations could fit. So I just wanted to encourage you to kind of look at it that way. But I don't think it's something we actually have done before. So I'm hoping we can kind of like get into it, and it gives each one of us, as well as the networks that we work in, at least some networking capabilities within the county, because it's, how I feel about those things. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. We had a pretty good, I was amazed at how much things that I do actually have either small or large impacts. It's just I don't think about them all the time. So anyway, that's it. Thanks. Rob?
Okay. Yes. Okay. Oh, go ahead. I think Franz had a question.
Well, not a question, but I think the idea in general is great, but I have some concerns, and I apologize if I sound negative, because CDP has pretty much been inactive for about 1.5 years. There was supposed to be long-term planning, 10-year plan, and all those things. So people thought they could implement the ideas, bring them up, and they have the feeling nothing happened. So a lot of these organizations say, why should I get involved? Why should I talk to you? Because everything that you said last year and the previous year, nothing happened. And I think it's very challenging to overcome. So a lot of these groups say, I prefer to work without the CDP, without the county, in other ways, because there's nothing happening. And so I don't really know how to convince all these different groups to say, oh yes, your voice will be heard. And yes, you can have input that can make a difference. And I think that's something we should find out. How can we tell them that anything they will say will go beyond being listened to, but will have some practical impact?
I don't have a good answer for you. I'm sure you were expecting that. But I think part of it is that's kind of what we're trying to show with this mapping too, is it's when we look at the why of action committees, the idea is to implement the CDP. And we know that implementation is happening broadly, we're just not tracking on it. And so it's completely appropriate for different organizations to be just working on whatever it is that they're passionate about. If it's connected to implementing the CDP, fantastic. We'd like to track it. We'd like to know if we could support them, but it's not something that we want to force anybody into doing. I think that's part of how we stay within our roles. The county can oftentimes get in the way of success for nonprofits and different organizations working. And so there's this fine balance of how we can help support when we get out of the way, and how we just help community to connect. We don't really have many tools that allow even community to see within community who's working on what. And I think that's the bigger picture of it. Sorry, Shane, I see your hand. Go ahead.
Yeah, Chair, if I may share some insight as well. I think this is one of the reasons why I came to the CDP, because of this affiliation. And I think that the community I come from, the voices were suppressed for 180 years. And so I think this is one of the reasons why I am here, is to make that connection to the nonprofits, to the NGOs that want to, or maybe, or have a connection or affiliation. And the reason why is because our things never came on the table on the county or state or even federal levels. And we had to fight for it. My kupunas, my grandparents and great grandparents fought for their voices to be on these tables. And only now we get them. I mean, I think the only real Kanakas on here right now is me and Uncle Charlie. And so I think this is a process that may not be perfect, but it's a start. And I'm going to work it as hard as I can.
Thanks, Shane. Yeah, I think this is my observation. There's a big difference between South Kona, how the South Kona people approach it, and how the North Kona people approach it. I think there are two distinct anxieties between the, and I'm using the word anxiety as opposed to maybe the word threat, facing South Kona and North Kona. North Kona seems to be moving at a much more rapid pace, and I believe that's by design. I believe the CDP actually tries to capture that. So, addressing those, perhaps with a South Kona perspective, is not, we don't meet in the same place. And I'm speaking just personally for myself. But again, when you look at the array of people and organizations that we deal with, there's a lot of power out there. Harnessing it, I think, is going to be the deal. Because Franz, you are dead right. I mean, when you say frustration, nothing has happened. I mean, even in my own organization, the nonprofit that we have, we fell apart at COVID, and we're still trying to put Humpty Dumpty back together, because there were so much expectations. We were moving so rapidly. Then when COVID hit, there was for lack of a better word, there was a lack of leadership, because we didn't know where we were going, and we're still trying to piece that back together. So I can really sort of empathize with that frustration, and I don't have the answers for that, obviously, but I see that we can make it work. But we're almost in a different starting point than we were 2 years ago, or we're starting from a different point, I should say, 2 years ago, and maybe this is an opportunity to put the puzzle back a little bit differently. But it's going to take, I think it's actually going to take more work, because we just don't have that. We're coming from a different place. But yeah, anyway, thank you both.
Okay. Then I'll start to share my screen, and I think we'll introduce this topic and then see how far we get. I believe, as Keiko was expressing, doing this in person has a much different dynamic at play. And as we've heard now from the different members, there are different perspectives on how or what we can expect out of this. So let's introduce it, and then have I'll go for a couple of minutes, and then let's kind of poll and see, how do we think this can proceed? So as Charlie was holding up the image, this is what we presented back in March, where we had been able to map for most of the members, the main organizations that you are involved with. After that meeting, we went out with a table somewhat like this, where we were asking then, can you map those organizations to specific community actions that we drew out of the CDP, so that we can kind of see, where do we have across the members organizations that are working in similar areas, and also how broadly then are these groups tackling different kinds of issues in the community action realm. What is the response so far is, we've gotten some input from some of the members, and we also then had a session with Charlie and Marissa to kind of do this together to kind of see how different ways of obtaining this information can work. And what we'll see when we look at this, we have all the community actions here, we were able to get some input from Franz. So Franz gave us his point of view of where his items relate to a couple of actions. Then in the meeting with Charlie and Marissa, we did the same thing where through a conversation, of course, there was a much more, I think, broad linkage made between organizations and the types of community actions we have. And so they have a much more present, I think you can say, mapping of their organizations to the type of actions that there are. But what you start to see then is, okay, on a couple of them, there are maybe some shared interests. And I think that is, what Keiko was trying to speak to earlier. How do we identify where that occurs and then give focus on what kind of support can be given to help these organizations to coordinate, if that's the right way to do it, or individually continue to press on these matters. So that's sort of the nature of the activity. What makes it a little complicated, of course, is that the list can be long according to what is in the community action, and we actually made it longer, perhaps to the frustration of this discussion. Because what we did find is that in the Kona CDP, there was a natural set of community actions that we can pull out of the different categories where we believe you guys as action committee members can leverage your organization to deliver. But if you have seen some of the other CDPs, in particular Hamakua and Ka'u, they specifically wrote a section on community actions that they believe were the right things for the committee, this type of forum to focus on. And so we took those and made them a bit generic in their language, because they are applicable to all the districts, as more inspiration to kind of say, where do your community groups hook up with the kind of community actions that are being determined by their different CDPs. So we did tag it with the two different sources so that you can make a clear distinction if you're going to focus on Kona CDP items versus looking at the island-wide suggestions for inspiration. The real question then is, what does it mean for you today to be able to give us your view of how you map your organizations here? The interesting thing is in the audience that we have, Charlie, I believe we've done a good real walkthrough. We've gotten Franz's input. So this is really a question then for Shane, Kari, and David, who are in the meeting today. How can we go forward to map? We call this an exercise, where one approach is we kind of walk it through. We kind of look at these items here. And if you've already kind of looked through the list and have a familiarity, you can call out and say, hey, my organization relates to this item. We can do that. However, I do believe, given the list of it, it might be a very long exercise. So I would like to just open it up to the floor, in particular from David and Kari and Shane, to kind of say, what is your view, having seen this, about what's a good way to approach this? Do you think walking through it in today's meeting is going to be fruitful? You've had some time to think about the connections, or do you have another view of how we can achieve gathering this information?
Rob, just my opinion, I don't think going through this line by line would be a really great use of the group's time this afternoon.
Yeah, Kako, I agree. I went through the list before the meeting, and what was good was that there were CDP references to the CDP manual, and I looked up some of them. I may have questions on a couple of them, but just because the community action was still kind of vague as to how it was related to the, like, for example, I think the very first one was CR 3.1A or something regarding Kanaka Maoli. Yeah, I just had questions on how you related the community action to the actual CDP reference. I think it was perpetuate Kanaka Maoli food production associated with land and ocean traditions and practices, CR 3.3B. When I looked it up, I was like, first of all, I couldn't find a B.
Okay. Yeah, I'd have to go back, Shane, just on that one. I believe that we had pulled this reference specifically out of it with this language. So if that connection is in error, then we, of course, should fix that. But that was the idea, that it should have come directly.
Yeah, this is my question, actually, Rob. It was 3.3B was culture, and the culture is the multi-ethnic culture, whereas the action item is specific to Kanaka Maoli. And so there's a little bit of conflict in my head regarding that. And so, because a lot of the NGOs that I work with would be Kanaka Maoli, but how does that relate to the CDP, to the reference? Because it's asking for multi-ethnic.
Okay, I can't answer right now without going into the details, but I understand what you mean, that there are some kind of concerns about that.
Sure. Is that I think it'll be ludicrous for us to go through line by line. But I feel like if you give us time to review this and write down our questions and email them to you, I think that would be fine.
Sure.
I don't know, Corey and David, that's my suggestion, but that's something that I would do.
Yeah, and we had hoped after the last meeting to kind of hand this as a bit of a homework where you would kind of reply, and and that's where we got some responses. The other option too is that if you want to kind of take a look at it, and if you would like to have a one-on-one discussion with us, so we can just get your input immediately, capture it, that also we can do. That's exactly what we tried with Charlie and Marissa to see how it worked, and it works well. And so maybe we will, as it's clear, I think we're not going to be able to achieve the full extent of this today, and I think that's right. We will leave it then that we will make contact with you and say, open it up to say, you have the choice. You can provide us your feedback in the template as you would like to on your own, or reach out and say, yes, I'd like a one-on-one, and we'll arrange a short half-hour meeting where we can capture your input. So I think that's sort of where we're at on this topic. From your perspective, Keiko and Chair Young, does that make sense that we take it forward as a continued follow-up outside of this meeting?
I think it makes more sense for the committee members too. Yeah, I think that's. I think that would be their preference, and then they can devote and fully focus on it. Much like you did myself and Marissa. Okay. We should give ourselves well, I wouldn't give ourselves necessarily a hard timeline, but we should have, I suppose, a working document at some point.
Yes. Yeah, I would suggest, Keiko, that it would be nice, of course, if we have captured everybody's input prior to the August island-wide meeting.
That sounds good. It would give us time to synthesize and kind of find synergies and make connections with other work, so that when we come to the September meeting, there's a clear way to move forward.
Okay. Good. Then we'll note that. Then that we will reach out to you subsequent to this meeting and see if you would like to have a one-on-one, and we will make those arrangements.
Yeah. Rob, I think we attempted to start having our meetings in the communities, and I should like to get back onto that schedule, COVID permitting and staff permitting, so that I think it would be much more I think we get a lot more out of them if these the subject matters or the topics that we're going to discuss that may have be specific to communities if we're able to get out there to them, you know, and kind of like reach out, especially as we, you know, I can think of reasons why some of the network people that I network would want to be on a meeting like this, provided that the subject matter was something that they were doing. So just keep that in mind. I don't know when we're going to get back to the regular schedule meeting, but hopefully it's soon.
Yeah, we're continuing to watch. I believe that we're still limited to a 10-person indoor gathering and a 25-person outdoor gathering.
Right.
But we're continuing to track that.
Yeah. Well, thanks.
Changes.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate that. Thanks.
Okay, then I think we've exhausted this topic for today. We've taken note of how we will try to proceed. And then I hand it back over to you, Chair Young, to take us to the next business item.
Okay, so this is really a time we set aside to catch up, I guess, on where we were with the Open Space Network. I know, Kari, you had a really good meeting. I guess it was a month or so ago, and I was hoping to give you some time so you can report on that. And
yes, I'd like to.
Sure.
And so I think you've all gotten, it was published, our meeting minutes when we met with Mayor Roth on April 27th. And, you know, the short of it is we were actually a little bit worried that we were not going to get support from the administration to continue on. And we were very pleasantly surprised that Mayor is going to give us his full support, and planning is totally on board to continue. And so you can read it, but that's the short of it, is that we have the support and that they will pursue. I believe it was part of the budget that was passed. And so that I don't think we have any financial hurdles to jump over. So I appreciate that. I think I think this is the project that everybody can and should get excited about. I think this is the one that you're going to be able to pull people in the community to say, what can we do together? How can we get to know each other, find out where we have common values and opportunities, and learn. And there's opportunities to understand and enhance, protect watershed. There's a way to have connectivity to get ourselves, our kids out and exercising and be healthy. There's ways to have neighborhood communities be better designed, incorporating open space. And I think, to me, you know, I appreciate, Rob, that you're trying to have this you know, I call it the matrix, right? Looking for common ground. But I really think intuitively, this is actually the place where people can get excited and actually will have results, you know. And I've said this before, I've been working on this since 2015. I'm timing out on CDP. And so I'm kind of hoping that this baby gets launched before I get replaced. And, you know, because it is time for a consultant to jump in and for all of us to support the community effort for input. So anyway, I'm really happy about this.
Thanks, Kari. Are you having follow-ups at all with the mayor's office, or are we're going to go through planning department as we did the last time with regards to the budgets and following up on all that?
Right. So my understanding is it is now really in the hands of the planning department to go ahead and go through qualifications and, you know, get a contract and get this kicked off. And I'm assuming that all of us are going to be asked to really, you know, meet up with community members, encourage people to come out. I mean, that's when you talk about, Charlie, having these meetings in different parts of Kona, right? That we can start having different community members come together to input and educate the design team on where the values, opportunities that, are here. And, and I keep saying it's like Olmsted, but we've got this wonderful archaeological layer that was not part of, say, an Olmsted design that is uniquely Kona, uniquely Hawaiian. And I think that's where we can find this place to meet. So that's my hope.
Great. Well, thank you very much for leading this. Any questions for Kari or comments?
No, awesome work, Kari. Yeah, that's good. When I read that letter, I was like, "Whoa, yes, we're finally making some movement." But I hear you. We're all timing out soon, so yeah, we gotta keep lighting that fire under the department too. Whatever way we can support you, Kari. Yeah, it's always good work. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. It was a roller coaster ride for a while. So if there's no other comments or questions, there was a last piece in there where I was going to ask if any other people have any other updates, and I was, kind of alluding to the letter to the director on the Ali'i Parkway, and we keep getting tangled up in that description, and I'm not so sure that's what applies. But Shane, can you help us with that? And the letter did get sent.
Yeah.
As per your recommendation.
I just wanted to reconfirm with you if the letter was sent. So yeah. And what was sorry, Kolomai Chair, what was the hookup you mentioned?
You mean the holdup or the?
Yeah, what was the holdup?
Well, we're using the word Ali'i Parkway, and every time I hear it, I go back to my days on the Burial Council, which were, probably 3 or 4 years of constant acrimony, because of the way the Ali'i Parkway had been structured. And I don't think that was our approach when you and I had discussed it. It was really about a CIP item that was on the list, and what we were trying to determine is whether we should preserve that CIP. If there was, but in order to do that, we really wanted to, consult with family members. And if I get this wrong, the history wrong, then please correct me. But it wasn't to duplicate, reinvent, recreate, or bring back per se the definition of the Ali'i Parkway. It was defined at the time. The Borough Council said no. It was really just to look at community interest, and specifically Hawaiian interests, and specifically the interests that were most negatively impacted when the Parkway was first suggested. And I think you captured that in in some of the committee meetings that we had, or the community meetings that we had. So I don't know if I got that right, but so
yeah, I'll just give a brief rundown. So the conversation actually started when every year the CDP would take a look at what we wanted to vet as part of our CIP projects, and I think we were able to pick like 3 or 5 projects that were on the CIP list. And one of them stuck out to us because we're just having that conversation regarding transportation and highways and roadways, and we're having a deep discussion about making sure, because of the traffic conditions that Kona was facing, and how Kailua Kona was becoming this traffic what you call, like, it was just like being stuck right there in Kailua Kona, particularly in Henry Street. And so we're looking at some of the items on the CIP list to see what was available at that time to help alleviate or continue the flow between the South Kona, particularly Ka'u and South Kona, actually, to North Kona, because of economics, because of jobs, because of all of that. And we look at roadways as an economic engine, not necessarily to address traffic. And that's how we saw it, was to make sure that we still was able to stimulate South Kona with economics without developing infrastructure that would impact the Aina and the resources out there. And so we needed credible, somehow creating credible traffic flow so that we can keep rural areas rural. And well, technically all of the island is rural, with that I learned from the state of Hawaii, but you know what I mean. Keep the boonies, and keep the city. And so that's why we took a look at the CIP. We saw that there was still, I guess, federal highways funding that was still attached to it. And then speaking to, I think at the time, Uncle Haram was still on the board with us, and he also mentioned how, yeah, the monies were still hung up, and that we had a certain time limit, or the county had a certain time limit to utilize these funds. And so we took a look at what needed to be done. And so I guess at the time, Mayor Kim was like, okay, if there's no opposition from the Ohanas, then he'll pick it up again. Now the term Ali'i Parkway was the name on the CIP list. That's what the project's called. And so that's why we use it. Now, of course, we had discussions moving forward that we didn't, even when we talked to the Ohanas, Uncle, you were part of that meeting. Sorry, Chair Charlie, not Uncle Charlie. That you're part of the meetings, that we did discuss that it's not going to look exactly the same as it was proposed. Especially now we have other outlets such as Laoloa Drive, and I mean, the road is already there. I mean, the road already exists. And so part of the discussion was, we may not want to scale it as large. The community may not want to call it a parkway. They might want to call it something else. And of course, Kari brings up a lot of things, that a lot of possibilities by using it as part of open space access to particular sites. Like some of the Ohanas are having a hard time accessing some of the cultural sites out there, especially going through private property that's no longer accessible for Ohanas. So we're looking at ways on how we can actually malama our resources and start utilizing these areas as part of our kilo, as part of our observations, and restoring economics through traditional methodologies. And so that's why we took a look at that. That's why I agreed to chair this subcommittee, was because of that idea that there is a possibility. Now, I saw Ms. McMichael's testimonies regarding open space and how she supported it. But I also saw some of the concerns she brought up that would have been addressed through the Ali'i Parkway CIP project, such as the inundation of how the water is rising. I mean, my questions would have been towards her was, where's these reports? When was it done? Like, because there's a lot of dated material and outdated material regarding climate change. And so I wanted to ask her if there's any updates, and if there were any traditional kilo that was done in the area as well. Because I know that's happening in different communities, such as Ho'okena, Kealakekua, and Miloli'i. We're doing these things, right? As well as Kaupulehu, Puako, and Kauaihae. And so I thought that this would have been a good catalyst for the community to come together to, number one, address economy, address infrastructure impacts to the rural areas, as well as address access to cultural sites, and so that they can malama these areas. That's the reason. I think those are the three main reasons why I think we decided to create the subcommittee. And in the subcommittee, I wanted to also make clear in my report that we did not accept new testimony we did not accept testimony from new individuals. We went and sought out those individuals who were already part of the consultation process during the initial process, like from the burial council. Like, I went out and asked SHPD for their list, and then we took a look at all the other consulting lists as well, and contacted those families. Of course, we found out 80% of those individuals were in Uahala already, and so we only had a handful of families. Now, the idea was to go back to them to see if they still had issues and what their issues were. And all I wanted to do was submit that as part of my report so that we can send it to the mayor and say, this is what the community is saying. That's all we're saying. And the idea is that the subcommittee never decide whether or not the CIP line item was going to be supported by the CDP. The CDP already decided before the subcommittee already was created. So it was already decided that we was going to work on it prior to the subcommittee being created. Does that help, I guess?
Yeah, I think, again, possibly it was just yourself, myself, and Kari. I think we're present at the time when we did that discussion. So,
And Barbara
yeah,
DeFranco, I think Barbara was there as well.
right.
Yeah.
I was trying to think who was on the AC at the time, and so
yeah. Anyway, yeah. Sorry.
yeah. So, but yeah, you've I think you've captured it in much greater detail than I even remember it. So I guess the question is it's back in the county's hands is
Right.
basically where the committee.
It's up to them. Yeah.
Right. So
and we set forth our recommendations, and one of them, I think I was clear. I said it 3 times. I read my letter again today. I think I said it 3 times. I said, you got to seek out consultation, and it has to be in depth. I mean, we're clear on what they should do in order to move forward with the process. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's see where we go with that, I guess. But thanks for the clarification. I was, I think only you could have explained it in the detail as you have. So any questions for Shane? No? Okay, so I guess we're getting close to the end. This agenda for next meeting? Is that next on the item? Ideas? Or do we have a date yet?
Chair, I do want to resurface George's comments today. Sorry, I forgot Mr. Yasuda's testimony earlier today. I do wanna somehow bring that up because we did have a deep discussion about that in the past. And not because I'm passionate about our coastlines and everything, but I remember even with open space conversations, we talked about how we could do this using green spaces to start controlling flood control as well. And so, Chair, I would like to continue this conversation regarding the flood. And I don't know what direction we're going to start or where we're going to start and where we're going to end. But I think we should take a look at what's in our CDP as far as how the policies are written. And I don't know, I cannot remember, but I think I remember Councilwoman David and Councilwoman Eoff was at that time. We spoke about how the FEMA report was not accurate. I don't know if we should revisit that. I mean, I don't know where to start, Chair, but I do want to continue this conversation if possible.
No, I remember that because there was supposedly a study done that was incomplete, and in fact, it even misidentified where one of the flood zones were. But that was somewhere in South Kona.
I thought it was the one that Mr. Yasuda was expressing because all the other ones was addressed, and the reason why it came off of that Waiaha or the one by Halehala Vai or something. Yeah. I cannot remember, but he said that it was the neighboring one that was actually overflowing into Kailua Bay, and that's what was causing the whole thing to. And I was like, oh yeah, that's exactly what we said. And so, anyway. Yeah, I want to revisit this and just kind of refresh our memories and learn about it, and let's talk about it. That's what I would like to see.
Yeah. So Rob, Keiko, I guess we're going to have to get more information from George in terms of his specificity. Yeah, Kari.
So, I would think that anything that has to do with flooding would be Department of Public Works Engineering. That's really who we need to talk story with.
Okay.
Yeah. Kari, did we bring them in our meeting at that time? Remember? Were they in our meeting?
I know we had a meeting when we were looking at the updated NFIP. And I can't I mean, it was a while, but I think there was some line adjustment that was
Right.
discussed. Anyway,
Yeah, thanks,
Was
Kari. I
this-
remember that. Yeah. Sorry, Keiko.
Was it in an action committee meeting? I'm just thinking we can go back and check through records to see what we can find too. We'll do some homework.
Yes, it was. And I want to say maybe Curtis Tyler was still part of this
Yeah.
this action committee.
Oh, okay.
So it's back then.
some vintage, yeah.
It's vintage.
Okay. So maybe what we can do is do some homework and some research, and then we can be ready because it sounds like there's a lot of interest, and so we can be kind of prepped for the next meeting of like forming a subcommittee or something so that you guys can work like an investigatory subcommittee so that you guys can work outside of meeting times and you're not strapped with sunshine
Yeah.
as much.
Do we need to put that on the agenda then for the next meeting, that there may be a proposal so that we can actually discuss it in the next meeting? Otherwise,
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah,
that's
we'll try to be
something-
proactive so that whatever
Yeah.
action you guys decide you want to take will be kind of covered.
right.
ready.
And yeah, I think there was something general about this. The action committee may consider establishing investigatory subcommittee. That's under the other business though, but we can leave that.
Yeah.
Put that on. Okay.
For sure.
Okay.
Chairman Young,
Yes.
so there are multiple agencies which govern flood control. The the Department of Public Works, DPW, governs it for the county, but flood control into the ocean is FEMA, but it's also the EPA, so the Environmental Protection Agency. And for every project that is that has shoreline access, you have to follow the different programs through the department, through the U.S. government, and there's different programs that are required, and normally the developments are required to provide that erosion control program as part of the work that's being ongoing. And I have contacts with the civil engineer who has developed these programs through most of the developments up and down the Kona coast. Her name is Nancy Burns, and she recently was working with Kohani Iki. I think she's out at Kona Village right now, working with their programs up there. But I can get in touch with her and provide more information to us regarding maybe a sidebar meeting that will help answer questions regarding these programs. I was personally, I'm a construction manager, and I managed the Kohani Iki development, complete build out from the roads out, and I was in charge of the erosion control plan and maintaining that for the development itself. So,
Well, thank you very much for your offer, and by all means, I guess I want to make sure that however we do the consultation, it's within. I guess we initiated within the realm of the county jurisdiction somehow, because going to the federal government as a county subcommittee or committee, I think we would still have to deal with the county processes and procedures first. So I'm just suggesting maybe that's the start. It may not be the ending point, but maybe that's the starting point for us. But I would sure like to understand the complexities of what it takes.
so
because I can tell you I don't.
As a possibility, we might be able to invite her to our next meeting, and she can just give you information regarding how the process works, and that way you can get fully updated in how erosion control plans work, how we can manage them, and how best to address the issues that seem to be forefront and center. Just going out to the Kailua Pier today and seeing all the brown water, people are very upset with what's happening there. So.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I can be. I was reminded by a former committee member too that we should try to be sure that it's something that lines up with the CDP. You know, something that's really in there and not straight too far.
Well, that could be challenging just because the Department of Public Works manages that, but it's also part of the planning department. And for every new development that gets issued for on shoreline, you always have to provide some sort of erosion control plan, especially if it's over 1 acre.
Yeah.
So if I could offer, I think, we kind of have two options. If you folks are like ready to start working on it, you could work two people together for now without violating sunshine law. So if Shane and David, you folks wanted to dive in deeper, talk to some folks, get information, you could do that. And then we could come back to the September meeting and form an investigatory subcommittee, which would allow four folks to be working together. Or if you feel like we could outline a specific goal now, we could, I think the agenda is loose enough that we could form an investigatory subcommittee now so that it wouldn't prevent you folks from starting to work before our next meeting.
Yeah, I think, thanks Kiko for that. Yeah, I don't mind working with David, but I think right now, I think what we got to do is, like Uncle Charlie had mentioned, that we got to get updated on what our parameters are within the county. I think we have to just remember what our conversations were and get updated why we had this conversation regarding FEMA in the first place. And then it's coming back to us like 3 or 4 years later. And so I think if we can get that from the department first to just say why, and then we can take our necessary steps outside and maybe bring in as a guest speaker in one of our meetings through David's connections. And then we can decide how we want to develop investigatory committee after that. I think once we get educated on what our parameters and what our options, then I think we can decide whether or not we want to start the investigatory committee or not.
Yeah. My recollection was FEMA was updating the maps. That's what I remember.
Yeah, so Charlie, part of the struggle with the open space was getting the different departments from the county to work together, because I wanted to have these composite mapping, right? And so part of it was getting all the riparian areas mapped down so that planning could see it as well. So that was kind of this little struggle that we had, and that updated mapping was one of the components we were waiting for. That's my memory anyway.
Yeah. If I can, I want to go back to Franz's, sort of comments on the setting expectations and not being able to, sort of stay on track with them, I guess, or losing sight of them. Franz, if I can ask, is there something real pressing we're missing that you're aware of that we should get back? Either we've missed or we lost track of, or we set expectations that are yet to be reached, so that we don't completely I suppose forget about them. So I'm just wondering if you had something you might want to put on the agenda in that regard.
Well, I see two things that have real impact on the 10-year plan. One is housing and one is transportation. And I think they kind of work together because, the jobs are not where the people live right now. And that's because of housing, but the transportation is also not there. So it makes it really challenging. And I think that's where those are things that could be addressed in a 10-year plan in a positive way that could have an impact. And a lot of the other issues could be positively affected.
Right. We had a pretty in-depth sort of view of TODs as the planning tool that we were going to be trying to wrap around. And I mean, at the time, it was all new to me. Are we still trying to adhere to that principle, in terms of the planning because the TODs were supposed to address all the issues, you just brought up. And I'm not even sure where we are with that, that as a planning model.
That's what led us to Ali Parkway, Uncle. So, it was that TOD conversation.
Well, I don't want to. I mean, it's so prevalent in the CDP.
I thought it was in LA, planning for LA or something with that TOD conversation.
Yeah. But it's the principles are very prevalent in the CDP. Franz, what I don't know.
So I mean, the county did a lot of presentations in different, in Kona and Waimea, South Kona, different places, gathered information from the public. They put down Post-it notes, comments, filled out paperwork. There was a company hired, I guess, from Oahu to gather that all. And I think maybe it would be helpful to see what the result was of all this, like how many people really wanted certain areas, and how is this going to be implemented? What is the current plan right now? Because at that time it was said at a certain time this year we would have a plan, at a certain time October we would be at another step. Where are we right now? What can we do at this time to still influence that plan, and in what way? And then we could go back to our different organizations, say, okay, the 10-year plan right now is this state. What do you want to import? What do you want to do regarding transportation? Are we going to have the spoke hubs? Are we going to have a bus system? Are we going to have more bike share? Are we going to have paths? Housing, how's the housing development plan? All these different things. They were all in there, but what is the current status?
Just to clarify, we're talking about general plan outreach and updates. Okay,
yeah.
Gotcha. So we can definitely point you to the comments, and we have incorporated comments into this next version, but that's the version that's being under review currently with the administration. So fingers crossed it'll start coming out soon, and you guys will be able to see reflected the comments that the community has made within the document. But yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And Keiko, that is island-wide, correct? Not just Kona, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the reason why I brought them up, because the watersheds are an issue because of roads and housing. So we know what the plan is, we can address the watersheds, and same with a lot of other issues. I think it's really very interactive.
Yeah. Yeah, oh boy, there's just so much stuff going on. Yeah, so are you all familiar? Well, that's not on the agenda, so I won't bring it up. Okay, so we need to somehow synthesize this before we get to the next meeting. I guess Rob, Keiko, and Alexis, we can work on that.
Yep.
That's a heavy lift, though. I mean, just what we put down there that's to me, it's more than a meeting. But
it is. It would be kind of cool if we could get folks to come and do presentations, though.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess there are follow-ups. David, you're going to help us with the contact with Nancy and what have you? Okay. All right. Well, I don't have any suggestions. As I say, that's a heavy lift. So I guess I'll work with staff and we'll try. And in the meantime, if you have more suggestions, please, get them to myself or to Rob or Keiko, Alexis, so that we, in plenty of time, so that we can get them on the agenda, assuming it fits. Go ahead, Kari.
So because my calendar, I'm kind of slave to my calendar. Keiko, could you repeat the dates that we're going to have our future meetings? I have
Sure.
August 12th,
Mm-hmm.
and then is it September or October that we meet again?
September 9th,
Okay,
and then November 10th.
November 10th. Okay, and we don't
And
have a
then-
time yet. Yeah.
I think our hope is to stick to this 5 to 7 period.
Okay. Because I think that would really help, you know, especially the members who are not here, if they
Yeah.
know, so that they can just block it out and plan their trips around it, I think we'd be in better shape.
Yeah, and by the November meeting, then we'll have a calendar for 2022, and we'll give that to you folks. If we have it
Keiko,
earlier, we'll
what-
give it for sure too.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
Keiko, would the meeting still be online in September and November? Or is it gonna change? Because
Yeah,
I think that
that's
matters as
still a
well.
question. I agree.
Oh,
It's
okay, yeah.
it's hard to connect. So this has provided a platform in a different way, in that we can live stream to YouTube, and then it kind of lives on for eternity. So folks who weren't able to attend can then still view. But it does make it hard for connection and interaction. And so we're watching to see when the rules might change around how many folks can gather. And then, yeah, waiting to go from there.
Okay, so
yeah.
so if the possibility opens up, then it'll probably, okay. So it's not set in stone whether it'll be online or in person.
No, we're planning
Okay.
for online until we hear differently.
Got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Mahalo.
Yeah.
And thanks, Alexis, for all of the materials and stuff too. Mahalo.
Welcome.
Sure. If there's no further business, I will move to adjourn.
That would be the last agenda item.
Second.
Okay. All in favor, please indicate by leaving the meeting. No, raising your hand. Okay. There were no nays, so we're in complete agreement for the first time tonight. Meeting is adjourned. And mahalo.
Mahalo, everybody.
Mahalo for everyone.
Aloha, you guys.
Mahalo.
Mahalo, hui hou.
Ahuyo.
Ahuyo.
It's